Okay, so I have open my Python 3 REPL, and I'm going to try to create some objects. So to create objects in Python, you type class, right? That kind of is like processing, right? And then you type the name of the thing. So I'm going to make, I don't know. I saw this example and I thought it was funny. So I'm going to make a shark class. And sharks are going to be able to do two things. They're going to be able to swim and bite stuff, right? Okay, so if I want to write variables for my shark, this is a place I could do that. So if I wanted to say a shark has a, oh, I don't know. What's the biology word? Phylum?
Like fin?
No. Yeah, okay. So let's do fin equals true.
Yeah.
Right? So my shark has a fin. All sharks have fins, hence fin equals true. This will be true of all members of the shark class. Right? Then later on, I want to give this thing some functionality, right? So I'm going to give it methods. In order to give a class a method, you just need to be in that class, which means, in this case, indented, right? And then you would write define, which is how you define a function in Python, right? So I'm defining the function swim, right? And then if I hit enter, oops, sorry. What did I miss? Do you guys see the thing? Yeah, you need a colon to define a function. So then when I hit enter, I get indented one more level. So this is how the swim function works. And just to test things out, I'm going to do print, and we're going to do swimming. Right? And that's really just to test that I'm in the swim function. You guys see this? Okay, so, sorry, say again? Oh, yeah. Better? Okay, so, in order to get a shark, right, how do I make one? How would you make one in processing? Yeah, so I want to make a shark, right?
You need a constructor, right?
Yeah, so I need to run the constructor, basically. You guys with me on that? So, turns out Python doesn't do constructors in quite the same way. You really just write a name. So, I'm going to have a shark that I'm going to call Sharky. And that's going to be, Sharky is a shark, parens. Okay, so I'm calling the method shark, right? Or the function shark. It doesn't really seem like that's a thing. You guys see that? I didn't define that anywhere. So that's going to call the shark constructor, even though I haven't explicitly written down what a shark constructor looks like. You guys good with that? That's going to be a little bit, that's what's going to be different here. There's one other thing that's going to be different. If you want to make Sharky swim, you would do Sharky dot, you guys see it?
Swim.
Yeah, it's right there. Sharky dot swim, right? Parens. You guys with me? So that should do the swim method to Sharky, yeah? If I hit run, I get this, what? Swim takes, what? What? Okay, so this is the fundamentally weird thing about Python. If you wrote here instead of Sharky, if you wrote shark, which is the class itself, this would do swimming. You guys see that?
Oh,
but the
give itself.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
you stole my punchline. The issue is that you are not calling the shark general swim method, right? You're trying to call this specifically on Sharky.
And which would just go back to saying shark equals shark.
So Sharky is a shark, right?
Okay.
So he's a member of that class, right? He's an instance or an object. and the class is kind of how all the things in there behave. The issue is that Python does a funny thing. When you call a method on a member of the class, it passes the variable Sharky to the swim method. So you have to put in here, when you define a method, they always take an argument, and that argument should always be self. And what that's doing is when you call the swim method, it's going to always pass the object that you're trying to make swim. You guys with me on that? So now that I've passed self here, now that I've said to expect self, I can now call Sharky.swim. This has to be the first thing in every method you write. So every method that you write for an object has to take this self argument. Doesn't have to do anything with it. They all have to take it. And it has to be first. If it's not first, it'll jack up your code. Because Python doesn't care about variable type. So it'll call it whatever you put in the first thing, and you'll get really confused. So they always get self first. So I'm going to make another method to illustrate how you would pass a different argument. So I'm going to say, define the function eat fish. Right? And I'm going to pass to the eat fish function self. Why am I passing it self? You need to refer to the object you're using, so Sharky's object. Yeah. So you always have to do this, right? You always have to assume that it's going to pass the object you're going to try to do it to. And then I'm going to also put in here a variable called number of fish, right? So that I can feed Sharky several fish. You guys with me on that? I'm going to go up here too and add I'm going to add a variable I'm going to call stomach, right? Which is going to be the number of fish that Sharky has in his stomach. And I'm going to set it, or that sharks have in their stomach. I'm going to set it equal to 0 to start. This is not necessarily good coding practice. I'm going to do a little bit better than that here in a second. And then it's telling me that it expected an indented block down here. Why? Why is it whining at me? What did I start doing that I didn't finish? Yeah, I started the eat fish method, but that thing doesn't have any content, right? So it's yelling at me because it expected me to tell it how the eat fish method works, right? So if I want the shark that I'm calling eat fish on to eat a number of fish, I should get the stomach out of that fish, or out of that shark. So I'm doing self.stomach, right? So that's the shark I fed. That shark's stomach is going to get more fish in it, right? So I'm going to do equals self.stomach. Should have picked a word that was easier to spell. Plus number of fish. You guys with me on that? What would be a more compact syntax to use here? Yep. Yeah, so you could do plus equals instead of self.stomach equals self.stomach plus. You could just do self.stomach plus equals number of fish. That would work. Okay. You guys with me on this?
Question. Does
Yes.
it matter, is it always plus equals or can you do equal plus? Does it matter? Equal plus doesn't work.
Good question. Let's try it.
Well,
So I'm going to do self.stomach equals plus number of fish. And okay, cool. So it's not throwing a syntax error. I'm a little bit confused by that, actually. My guess would be that it was going to throw a syntax error, but maybe it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to comment this line out just to convince myself that the eatFish method is working. Right? So how do I call the eatFish method on Sharky? So far, underneath my class definition, I've said Sharky is a shark and Sharkies should go swimming. And then what? How do I feed Sharky, say, 7 fish? Okay, good. Sharky dot eat fish, and this thing is very convenient, right? It supplies some like available stuff. So Sharky dot eat fish, and then number 7 in here. You guys good with that? So that's calling the eat fish method on Sharky and passing 7. How do I tell that that took effect? Because like right now I run this and I get swimming. Yeah, I need to somehow print. And what do I want to print out? Good. Yeah, I could put this in a eat fish method that it just prints out like Sharky now has whatever in his stomach. That would be totally fine. Otherwise I could do this where I'm printing out the stomach variable out of Sharky, the object. So if I hit go, I now have 7 fish in Sharky's stomach. If I hit go again, how many fish will Sharky have in his stomach?
Does it say that? Wouldn't it still be 7?
Good. It would still be 7 because you're rerunning the code, right? You guys see that? So remember, Python is a scripting language. It's not a looping language. So unless you make some effort to get it to loop like processing does, it just runs the code once from top to bottom. Right? Processing has that built-in draw function that loops and loops and loops. You'll see an implementation of that today. In the assignment code, I gave you a program that loops and loops and loops, but by default, that's not how Python works. Yep. Yep, because it runs once and then doesn't loop again. So if you want something to change, you need to make a loop. Yeah, you'll need some kind of a loop structure. So you would use a while loop or something. There's an example in the exercise for today. So I want to do one more thing with objects, which is you need to be just a teensy bit careful with objects both here and in processing. They both work the same way. If you make a new shark that you call Steve is Sharky, you guys with me on this? So I'm just saying Steve is a copy of Sharky, right? Right. If they were integers, this would just be a copy. But with objects, this points at a place in the memory. So I'm feeding Sharky here, right?
And you're also feeding Steve.
If I ask Steve what he's got in his stomach, he still has 7 fish in his stomach because he's not a different shark than Steve. He's the same shark by a different name. If you want to make a new one, instead of a copy, what do you need to do? Yeah, you need to call the shark maker on... Oops. You need to call the shark maker again, right? The constructor. Further thing, I said this was bad code practice.
Making it difficult to spell things.
Yeah, A, making it difficult to spell things. And B, that actually is an initializer, right? For a variable that might be different by shark. You guys see that? Like, maybe I shouldn't start all my sharks with an empty stomach. You guys see that? So if I'm going to try to start sharks with something other than an empty stomach, you need this thing where you define, and what you're overwriting is the init method Why are we whining? Why are we whining? Oh no! I forgot my brain. I forgot my brain. I'm missing parens. And you need a self. Okay, so if you want to make a shark with a possibly not empty stomach, this won't do it. This will make all the sharks have an empty stomach when they start. If I want to make them take some stomach contents with them, I might have a variable initial stomach. And then I would do self.stomach is initial stomach. And now this is going to cause my code to be borked. So why is this going to cause the code that I have to be borked?
Oh, because you're not having that.
Yeah, down here, I'm saying make a shark. Shark's supposed to require something. You guys see this error? Missing one required initial stomach. I didn't tell it what was supposed to be in Sharky's stomach when he started. So maybe I make Sharky a hungry shark, he gets nothing in his stomach, and I make Steve a shark with, say, 3 fish in his stomach initially. Now if I hit run, I get swimming and 3. Where are those coming from? So who's swimming? Yeah, Sharky's swimming, right? Okay, this is annoying, right? I want to know which shark is which. So if I want to, like, say, name my shark.
When you just print self and then...
Yeah, so this self object doesn't have a name. It's the self object is the object, like all of it.
Got it.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Like it's a little bigger than a print line because it's actually the whole friggin' thing. So what you want to do is make a name field. So you do like temp name is going to be one of the arguments my constructor expects. And then I do self.name equals temp name. Right. And then when I construct a shark, I need to tell it a name. So I'm expecting to pass the string Sharky and the value 0, and the string Steve and the value 3. You guys with me? I'm not using those for anything right now, so they're not going to change the output. If I wanted to use them for something, I might do something in here like print self.name plus swimming. What's the plus acting as there? This plus sign?
Oh.
Yeah, good. That's string concatenation.
You're going to need to add another space.
Yeah, so it says Sharky swimming all as one string, right? Because the name doesn't have any spaces in it, and I didn't put one at the beginning of this. So I might do space is swimming. So Sharky is swimming now. Cool. All right. Caveats to objects. Just if you're going to overwrite the initializer method, feel free to do that. Just make sure it takes self and then the arguments that you want. Make sure self is the first argument. Self should be the first argument for all of the methods that you write. You don't have to use it, but you do need it. If you put something else in there, it won't work well. It will be confusing as heck. Cool? Questions, things?